Wanted to go over a little reading today. It's a short read. I'm going to skip through it, but we'll go over a testimony about a mother who said that Albert Pike took her to Allah. The article in question purports to be in the main extracts from the writings of Diana Vaughn, high priestess, after she was converted and became a Catholic a year ago. The story goes that after her conversion in Paris, she created consternation among the worshippers by publishing an expose of their diabolical practices under the form of memoirs. So then she goes on to speak about how she drank hemp seed oil. And I wish she didn't say that, because what happens later, I know hemp seed isn't strong, but you don't know if it was strong or not at this time. This is speaking in 1896. You know what I'm saying? So we'll go on about where she speaks about meeting Albert Pike. To sustain me on my journey, I drank an infusion of hemp seed at 7 o'clock in the evening. Two members of the Masonic Veteran Association appeared. I was so happy that I staggered, and they were obliged to support me. I remember that I no longer saw anything around me. My mind was filled with the thought that I was about to see the good God face to face. The iron doors of the sanctum opened. My two companions remained outside, and I heard the voice of Albert Pike saying, "Fear nothing, beloved sister, enter." I was overcome with emotion. My limbs trembled under me, but I repeated that I was not afraid. I was not in fear by the paralyzing strength. And I am proof of this. Far from the cold perspiration of fear, I was burning up with an internal fire. My brain seemed bursting. But remember, she said she drank the hemp seed oil. And again, I wish she didn't do that. The 11 first men hastened to me, surrounded me, while Albert Pike led me to a seat in the center of the room, and the doors were closed. They chanted a hymn in a language unknown to me, and then retired, Pike going out last. And as he went addressing these words to me, "The great hour has arrived, and it will last until midnight. Remain seated during your meditation, and keep your eyes fixed on the palladium. You can, however, close them at intervals in order to better meditate upon the extraordinary favor which is granted to you today. But if the slightest inclination to sleep overcomes you, open your eyes, rise, and walk around." Suddenly I heard thunder, 3 deafening claps in rapid succession, then one single clap, then 2 consecutive ones in an extraordinary violence. Indeed. Then I felt 5 burning blows in my face, and I saw before my 5 spirits, 5 genies of most radiant beauty, floating space above the spot where I had last seen the Baphomet, which is Venus. That terrible monster had disappeared. The 5 spirits were clothed in long robes of dazzling whiteness. Their large wings sustained them in space. They were in a circle, their fingers pointing toward the empty palladium. Finally, a 7th clap, again a 7th of thunder was heard, more formidable than any other of the preceding ones. At that moment, I saw, quote unquote, Lucifer before me, which is the morning star Venus, seated on a throne of diamonds, and there was no human reason to tell me how he came there. It seemed to me that he had always been there, and not Baphomet. Seized with respectful awe, I was about to cast myself at his feet. He restrained me with a majestic gesture. Remain standing, my beloved child, he said. Prostration is humility. Again, prostration is humility, and I never humiliate those I love and who love me. This supreme liar was superb. Now, why is she being so biased and impartial? He appeared to me just as I had pictured him. His manly beauty, unforgotten even to this day, is undescribable. I can find no expression adequate to make this imposing and ravishing splendor comprehensible. From his head to his feet, which were alone visible in flesh, unless I accept his hand. He was clothed in gold, dazzling gold, whose varying colors rendered his garments still more magnificent. Picture a coat of mail in golden particles, each particle as large as ordinary pearl. And all these particles in red, green, and yellow gold. Again, red, green, and yellow gold, mingling, moving, given to the whole an effect of celestial richness, which the most vivid imagination of our greatest artists could never conceive. Overcome by my emotions of passionate adoration, being before me, I felt myself sinking, enveloped in flames. I seemed to sink through space, but I was no longer afraid, for the good God, no longer seated on his throne of diamonds, stood behind me as we floated down and down until we reached a country beautiful in most vegetation. Now, again, I wish she didn't drink that seed oil, because she could have, but again, she's speaking of Venus, and we're going to go to the demonstration in regards to the morning star, the light bearer, and all that. Again, I wish she didn't drink this. Why did she have to say she drunk that hemp seed oil? So let me find this video where I already responded to these Christians.
He was the Grand Commander, Sovereign Pontiff of Universal Freemasonry years ago. All right, the Grand Commander, Sovereign Pontiff, like the Pope of Universal Freemasonry. So if anybody should know whether Freemasonry is a religion, Albert Pike should know. And here's what Albert Pike said when he was giving instructions to the 23 Supreme Councils of the world of Freemasonry. And I quote, "That which we must say to the crowd is, we worship a God, but it is the God one adores without superstition. To you, sovereign grand inspector generals, we say this." Listen to this. He says what they should tell the public, but what should be told to the inspector generals, okay, that he was meeting with. Sovereign grand inspector generals, we say this, and you may repeat it to the brethren of the 32nd, 31st, and 30th degrees. So all those who are lower than that never get to know this. He says, the Masonic religion should be by all of us, initiates of the high degrees, maintained in the purity of the Luciferian doctrine. So Albert Pike said, Freemasonry is a religion to be maintained within the teachings of the Luciferian doctrine. Here is his argument as he presented this argument to the Grand Inspector Generals. If Lucifer were not God, because he says Lucifer is God. Now, they worship Lucifer. This is my point. This is my point, that it is not an economic issue. It is about establishing a Luciferian order. It is about enthroning Satan. It is about the worship of Satan. This is what the World Economic Forum Club is about. This is what it's about. You may not know it. At the junior levels, you're not going to know it. Here is what Albert Pike provided them, a strategy. And what Klaus Schwab is doing is modifying this strategy for today's world, because Albert Pike presented this years ago. So what is the, and I'll show you how he modifies it. Just listen to this. He says, if Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians, whose deeds prove cruelty, perfidy, and hatred of man, barbarism, and repulsion for science, would Adonai and his priests calumniate him? It says, if Lucifer were not God, would Adonai, the God of the Christians, and his priests calumniate Lucifer? Can you imagine that? Look at the reasoning. So he goes on to say, yes, Lucifer is God. Then he says, and unfortunately, Adonai is also God. For the eternal law is that there is no light without shade, no beauty without ugliness, no white without black. For the absolute can only exist as two gods. Darkness being necessary for light to serve as its foil, as a pedestal is necessary to the statute, and a brake to the locomotive. Thus the doctrine, now here's an interesting thing, the doctrine of Satanism is heresy.
Peace and greetings, brothers and sisters. Today will be a demonstration in regards to correcting Pastor Chris Yakalom of the mega church Christ Embassy, and this will be added into the minutes and the transactions in the playlist. Let's begin. In Hebrew, Haliel or Halel, in Greek, Heosphorus, bringing of dawn, which means the first light of the day, the name of the morning star, but it is in regards to Venus, because the sun reflects off of Venus and puts the light into the cosmos. And it's in reference to the 5-pointed green star on the red flag. It's love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice to be taught to all nations and all lands. The light bearer, bringing truth and Aught. In the spirit realm, that name applies to the greatest creature who ever graced the entire universe, in the ever-growing universe wherein the cosmos is nestled. The Christian's Bible, in regards to the Hebrew, the name Lucifer itself is not even a Hebrew name. It is a Latin name that means, again, light bearer. The use of the name Lucifer in the context of referring to Satan as a fallen angel is a later interpretation that developed in the Christian tradition. And that's tradition. It's not a part of the original Hebrew text at all. That is one of the reasons why we have the Cornish flag at the Cornish temple, not in regards of St. Piran, but because it is a cross, north, south, east, and west, light coming out of darkness, reaching the whole world from north, south, east, and west. But it also has 490s, which makes a 360, a circle, turning your square into a circle, perfection of man. He spoke of no light without darkness, no good without evil, water, dry, as above, so below, hot, cold, no, yes, ebb and flow, push and pull, positive, negative. That's what this universe is. Without a foe, a man never knows his strength. Again, without a foe, a man never knows his strength. Does not the Christian Bible speak of Satan going to and fro, devouring whoever will let him devour? Heaven and hell is not a far off country, somewhere you have to go after this life. Heaven and hell is within, the last place that you would ever look. And the Creator's within. It is a battle, as above, so below. You must defeat your lower self. In regards to the compass and square that's facing up and down, as above, so below. We spoke of this, the triune principle of the triangle or the pyramid. Who made the devil? Elohim. Who is Elohim? Elohim is the 7 creative spirits that created everything that ever was, is, and evermore to be. What is the higher self? The higher self is the mother of virtues and the harmonies of life, and breeds justice, mercy, love, and right. Can the higher self pass away? No. Why? Because it is a law in man. And what did Jesus or Yehoshua say? Elah, why have you forsaken me? And who calls themselves God? Satan. What does the lower self breed? Hatred, slander, lewdness, murders, theft, and everything that harms. What did the higher self say to the lower self at one time when he met him? Where are you going, Satan? What was the answer the lower self gave to the higher self? I am going to and fro the earth, seeking who I may devour. Has he finished his task of devouring? Yes. When was his time declared out? When he nailed Jesus on the cross. What are the last words Jesus uttered? It is finished. What does the name Jesus mean? Jesus means justice. The Christians speak of fallen angels, but what is an angel? An angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh. What are angels used for? To carry messages to the 4 corners of the world, to all nations. And again, that is the light bearer, the one that brings the Aught, or reflects the sun off of Venus into the cosmos. Upon the boundaries of the plane of soul, the ether began to vibrate slower still, and then the essences took on a final garb. The perfumes and the odors and the true sensations and all of love were clothed in flesh, and man was clothed in flesh. Perfected man must pass through all the ways of life, and so a carnal nature was full manifest, a nature that sprang forth from fleshly things. Without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength, and thought must be developed by the exercise of strength. And so this carnal nature soon became a foe that man must fight, that he might be the strength of Allah made manifest. Let every living thing stand still and hear. Man is the Lord of all the plane of manifest, of protoplast, of mineral, of plant, of beast. But he gave up his birthrights just to gratify his lower self. But man will regain his lost estate, his heritage, but he must do it in a conflict that cannot be told in words. Yea, he must suffer trials and temptations manifold, but let him know that cherubim and seraphim that rule the stations of the sun and spirit of the Almighty Allah, who rule the solar stars, are his protectors and his guide, and they will lead to victory. Man will be fully saved, redeemed, perfected by the things he suffers on the plane of flesh and on the plane of soul. The man has conquered carnal things. His garb of flesh will then have served its purpose well, and it will fall, will be no more. Then he will stand untrammeled on the plane of soul, where he must fully complete his victories. Unnumbered foes will stand before man upon the plane of soul. Then he must overcome, yea, overcome them every one. Thus hope will ever be his beacon light. There is no failure for the human soul, for Allah is leading on and victory is sure. Man cannot die. The spirit man is one with Allah. And while Allah lives, man cannot die. When man has conquered every foe upon the plane of soul, the seed will have full opened out, will have unfolded in the holy breath. The garb of soul will then have served its purpose well, and man will need it no more. And it will pass and be no more, and man will attain into the blessedness of perfectedness and be at one with Allah. John 10:34. Jesus answered them, is it not written in your law, I have said ye are gods? There are two selves, the higher and lower self. The higher self is human spirit clothed with soul, made in the form of Allah. The lower self, the carnal self, the body of desires, is a reflection of higher self, distorted by the murky ethers of the flesh. The lower self is an illusion and will pass away. The higher self is Allah in man and will not pass away. The higher self is the embodiment of truth. The lower self is truth reversed, and so is falsehood manifest. The higher self is justice, mercy, love, and right. The lower self is what the higher self is not. The lower self breeds hatred, slander, lewdness, murder, theft, and everything that harms. The higher self is mother of the virtues and the harmonies of life. The lower self is rich in promises, but poor in blessedness and peace. It offers pleasure, joy, and satisfying gain, but gives unrest, misery, and death. I leave you in peace and love, brothers and sisters. I ask that you put on the scale what that man said and what I said, measure it up, and see what is truth and falsehood, higher self, lower self, as above, so below.